Imagine losing everything, absolutely everything. Your possessions accumulated through years of hard work and dedication. Your family, the foundation of your existence, the laughter of your children, the embrace of your spouse, the security of your home, your health, the vitality that drives every day, replaced by excruciating, incessant pain. All of it in the blink of an eye, without warning, without apparent explanation. What would you do? What would be your first reaction to such a profound abyss of despair? Would you curse the heavens, blaming a higher power for your misfortune? Would you give up, surrendering to the darkness of hopelessness? Or, amidst this unimaginable devastation, would you find an unshakable strength, a resilience that transcends human logic, a faith that shines brightest in the deepest darkness? This is not a work of fiction, a moral tale for children. It is an ancient account, a sacred text that has challenged human understanding for millennia. A narrative that forces us to confront the most uncomfortable questions about faith, unjust suffering, and the very nature of divine justice. Prepare to delve into the life of a man who, even in the face of the inexplicable, the most excruciating pain, and the incomprehension of everyone around him, dared to maintain his integrity, his unwavering belief. This is the story of Job, and it will make you question everything you think about life and faith. The narrative of Job, one of the most enigmatic and theologically dense books in the biblical canon, is not merely a historical account, but a profound philosophical and theological exploration that has captivated and intrigued scholars, theologians, and common readers for centuries. The Book of Job stands out for its complexity, its sublime poetry, and its direct approach to existential questions rarely addressed with such frankness in other religious texts. Job was a man described with superlatives, blameless and upright, who feared God and shunned evil. These qualities were not mere formalities. They represented the essence of his character, the basis of his reputation, and the reason for his prosperity. He lived in the land of Uz, a region whose exact location remains a mystery to historians and archaeologists, but which is generally associated with areas of the Middle East, perhaps in Transjordan or northern Arabia. Regardless of its precise geographical location, Uz was depicted as a land of abundance, suitable for raising cattle, sheep, and camels, and for agriculture. Job was, without a doubt, one of the wealthiest men of his time, owning thousands of sheep, camels, oxen, and donkeys, in addition to a large number of servants. His wealth was not just material. He was blessed with a large and loving family, 7 sons and 3 daughters, who regularly gathered for feasts and celebrations, demonstrating a harmonious and happy family life. His health was robust, his reputation impeccable, and his life seemed to be the epitome of perfection, a living example of how righteousness and devotion to God could result in abundant blessings and a fulfilling existence. He was a respected patriarch, a community leader, and a man whose life seemed to be a testament to divine justice, where virtue was rewarded with prosperity and peace. But, as the story reveals with a shocking twist, perfection is often an invitation, or perhaps a catalyst for the most severe test. The Book of Job begins with a celestial scene that shocks us and forces us to reevaluate our conceptions of good and evil, of divine sovereignty, and of free will. Satan, whose name means adversary or accuser, appears before God not as an omnipotent being, but as part of a divine council, an agent who has permission to roam the earth and observe humanity. He is not God's equal, but a subordinate being, who questions Job's integrity. The dialogue between God and Satan is one of the most controversial and fascinating points of the book. God, proud of his servant Job, asks Satan if he had noticed Job's righteousness. Satan, with his characteristic cunning, argues that Job was only faithful and God-fearing because God had blessed him abundantly, protecting him with a hedge around everything he possessed. Satan's accusation is direct and provocative. He suggests that Job's faith was merely transactional, based on self-interest, and that if Job lost everything, he would curse God to his face. Satan's audacity is impressive, and his proposal is a direct challenge to the authenticity of human faith. God, in an act of supreme trust in his servant's faithfulness, allows Satan to test him, but with a crucial and non-negotiable condition. Job's life must be spared. This divine permission raises profound questions about the nature of evil, Satan's freedom to act, and the purpose of suffering. It is not that God causes evil, but he allows evil to happen for greater purposes, often incomprehensible to the human mind. This scene sets the stage for the impending tragedy, but also for the demonstration of true faith. And then, tragedy strikes Job with overwhelming, almost merciless speed. The sequence of events is brutal and relentless, designed to strip Job of everything he valued. In a single day, a series of messengers, each bringing more devastating news than the last, arrive at his door. First, the Sabaeans attack and steal his oxen and donkeys, killing his servants. Next, a fire of God, likely lightning, falls from the sky and consumes his sheep and more servants. Soon after, the Chaldeans, divided into 3 raiding parties, steal his camels and kill the rest of his servants. But the most devastating blow, the one that truly shatters Job's soul, is the final news. A great wind from the desert strikes the house of his eldest son, where all his sons and daughters were gathered for a feast, and the house collapses, killing all of them. Job's pain is unimaginable, a pain that transcends human comprehension. He lost his possessions, his financial security, his servants, but, above all, he lost his offspring, the future of his lineage, the joy of his life. Job's reaction, however, is what shocks and inspires. He does not surrender to despair. He does not curse God. Instead, he tears his robes, a sign of deep mourning and despair, shaves his head, an act of humiliation and submission, but in an act of faith that defies all human logic and Satan's every expectation. He falls to the ground and worships God. His words, uttered amidst the deepest anguish, echo through the centuries as a testament to unwavering faith. Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. Even amidst so much pain, so much loss, and so much anguish, Job did not sin with his lips. He did not attribute any injustice to God. He recognized divine sovereignty over life and death, over giving and taking, and chose to worship. But Job's suffering does not end there. The first phase of Satan's test failed to break Job's integrity. So, Satan returns to God's presence, arguing that if the affliction touched Job's own body, he would surely curse God. God, once again, allows the test, but with the same condition: Job's life must be spared. And so, Satan strikes Job with a terrible and painful disease, a kind of malignant ulcer or leprosy that covered his body from head to toe. Job is forced to sit in ashes, a place of humiliation and mourning, and to scrape his sores with pottery shards, seeking minimal relief from from the excruciating pain. His appearance is grotesque, his pain unbearable, and he becomes an outcast, an object of repulsion. It is at this moment of profound physical and emotional degradation that his own wife, who had also lost everything but does not show the same resilience, urges him to curse God and die. Her words are a cry of despair, a suggestion that death would be a relief from so much suffering, and that Job's faith was useless in the face of such calamity. But Job, with a resilience that inspires and challenges us, responds with a gentle but firm rebuke. "You are talking like a foolish woman. Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" He refuses to abandon his faith, to succumb to his wife's temptation, and to blame God for his affliction. He maintains his integrity, his belief that God is sovereign in both good and bad, and that his faith is not conditional on circumstances. This scene is crucial, as it shows the depth of Job's faith, which resists not only material and family loss, but also excruciating physical pain and the pressure from his own companion. It is at this point of deep misery that Job's three friends enter the scene: Eliphaz, the Temanite, Bildad, the Shuhite, and Zophar, the Naamathite. They come from afar to console him and mourn with him. At first, their attitude is one of genuine compassion. They sit with Job on the ground for 7 days and 7 nights, in silence, sharing his pain and anguish, a gesture of solidarity that is deeply moving. However, as time passes and Job finally breaks the silence with a bitter lament, wishing he had never been born, their perspective on Job's suffering is revealed. They are proponents of the theology of retribution, a common belief at the time and still today that all suffering is a direct punishment for sin, and that prosperity is a sign of divine blessing. For them, the logic was simple and unquestionable. If Job was suffering so much, he could only have committed some grave sin, some hidden transgression that was being punished by God. They begin to speak, each in turn, with long and eloquent arguments, trying to convince Job to confess his sins and repent so that God could restore him. Eliphaz, the oldest and perhaps the most wise, begins with a gentler, yet still accusatory, approach, suggesting that Job must have sinned. Bildad is more direct and severe, stating that Job's children must have sinned to die that way. Zophar is the most impatient and dogmatic, accusing Job of arrogance and insisting that he deserves even more suffering. They falsely accuse him of being a terrible sinner who received deserved divine punishment, and their words, instead of comforting, only increase Job's anguish, turning what should have been a moment of support into a tribunal of accusations and judgments. Job, in turn, vehemently insists on his innocence. He does not acknowledge any grave sin that could have brought God's wrath upon him. He defends himself against his friends' accusations, arguing that their words are miserable comforters and that they are adding salt to his wound. He does not deny the existence of sin or God's justice, but he refuses to accept the premise that his suffering is a direct punishment for his transgressions. He argues with his friends, refuting their heavy accusations, but he also does not understand the reasons for his suffering. He questions God, not irreverently, but with a deep desire to understand why there is so much pain and affliction. He longs for an encounter with God, for an explanation, for a just judgment. He cries out for justice, for an opportunity to present his case before the Creator. This inner struggle between doubt and faith, between incomprehension and trust, is one of the most striking and humanly relatable points of Job's story. He is not a passive saint who accepts everything without question. He is a man of flesh and blood who feels pain, injustice, and confusion. His honesty in expressing his anguish and his questions to God is a testament to his authentic faith, which is not afraid to confront the Creator with his deepest doubts. This struggle shows how adversity can be a test of character and spiritual resilience, forcing the individual to confront their own beliefs and the nature of their relationship with the divine. After the long and fruitless debates between Job and his friends, a new character emerges, Elihu, a young man who rebukes both Job and his friends for their failures to understand God's justice and sovereignty. Elihu sets the stage for divine intervention. Finally, God answers Job, not by explaining every detail of the suffering, not with a theological justification that satisfies human logic, but from a whirlwind, a powerful and majestic manifestation of his presence. God's answer is not an explanation, but a demonstration of his omnipotence, his unfathomable wisdom, and the limitation of human understanding. God asks Job a series of rhetorical questions, questioning his ability to comprehend creation, to control the elements, to understand the mysteries of the universe. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you have understanding. Job 38:4. Can you bind the chains of the Pleiades? Can you loosen Orion's belt? Job 38:31. These questions highlight the vastness of God's wisdom and power in contrast to the insignificance and ignorance of man. This response leads Job to recognize his limitation, his smallness before divine greatness, and to humble himself before God's majesty. He understands that there are things that human beings do not understand, mysteries that are beyond their comprehension, but that it is possible to trust God even without understanding everything. His final response is one of repentance and worship. I know that you can do all things. No plan of yours can be thwarted. You asked, who is this that obscures my counsel without knowledge? Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. You said, listen now, and I will speak. I will question you, and you shall answer me. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes. Job 42:2-6. The divine intervention does not solve the problem of evil theoretically, but reaffirms God's sovereignty and the need for faith and trust. Even when reason fails, the story of Job teaches us profound and timeless lessons that resonate with the human experience in all ages. Firstly, and perhaps most crucially, is that not all suffering is a direct result of personal sin. The theology of retribution, so strongly advocated by Job's friends, is unmasked as a simplistic and often cruel view of divine justice. Job did not lose everything because of hidden transgressions, but as part of a trial permitted by God, a test of his faith and integrity. This offers immense comfort to those who suffer unjustly, freeing them from the burden of guilt. Secondly, the story of Job emphasizes the importance of maintaining faith and integrity even in the face of the greatest adversities. Job's patience, his refusal to curse God, even when his pain was excruciating and his friends accused him, is a supreme example of perseverance in tribulation. His faith was not blind, but a faith that questioned, that struggled, but that, in the end, bowed to God's sovereignty. Thirdly, Job's narrative reaffirms God's sovereignty over all situations. Even in the face of pain, apparent injustice, and chaos, God is not a mere passive observer. He is in control, even when his ways are incomprehensible to us. God's answer from the whirlwind does not explain the why of suffering, but reaffirms his infinite majesty and wisdom, inviting Job and us to trust in his character, even when we do not understand his purposes. Job's story also teaches us about the fallibility of human judgment and the need for compassion instead of condemnation for those who suffer. In the epilogue of the story, after Job's humiliation and God's rebuke of his friends for not speaking rightly about him, God restores Job's life abundantly. He not only recovers what he lost, but receives double of everything he had before: 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 donkeys. He is also blessed with a new family, 7 sons and 3 daughters. And his daughters are described as the most beautiful in all the land. Job lives a long and prosperous life, seeing his descendants to the 4th generation. This restoration is not merely a material reward, but a testament to God's faithfulness and the reward of patience and perseverance in faith. The story of Job is a testament that even when life hits us with the greatest trials, faith and integrity can lead us to restoration and a deeper understanding of God's character. It reminds us that even when we do not understand the purpose of our suffering, humility before God's greatness can bring us peace, restoration, and a new sense of purpose. Job's restoration does not nullify the pain he felt, but places it in a larger perspective, showing that suffering can be a path to a deeper and more authentic relationship with God. The story of Job continues to resonate with impressive force today, offering comfort, inspiration, and a profound challenge to those facing their own trials, whether great or small. It transcends the barriers of time and culture as it addresses universal questions of the human condition: unjust suffering, the search for meaning amidst pain, the nature of faith, and divine sovereignty. It invites us to reflect. How do we react when our world crumbles? When life strikes us with unexpected and seemingly meaningless blows? Do we choose faith, even when the pain is overwhelming and logic fails? Job's narrative does not promise a life without suffering, nor does it offer easy answers to the problem of evil. Instead, it assures us that, with unwavering faith, we can navigate the most violent storms and emerge stronger, with a deeper understanding of God's sovereignty and love, even if that understanding is permeated by mystery. Faith amidst suffering does not eliminate pain, but it empowers us to endure it, to find purpose even in the most difficult circumstances, and to trust that there is a greater plan even when we cannot see it. The story of Job is a powerful reminder that true faith is not the absence of doubt, but the ability to persist in belief, even when everything around us seems to fall apart. It is an invitation to a faith that does not demand explanations, but trusts in the goodness and wisdom of a God who is greater than our problems and deeper than our understanding.